In the final decade of the 19th century, Brazil was on the scope of transformation. A nation still forged identity after the fall of the monarch. The city buzzed with modern ambition, steam engines rattled, European fashion grazed the streets, and the hands of one young man, tucked under his arm, came two level balls and a future no one could have predicted. Charles William Milner. Born in São Paulo to a Scottish father and a Brazilian mother of English descent, Milner was sent to England for education, especially to Southampton, a town where football was fast becoming more than just a pastime. There, he mastered the art of the game. Quick-footed, sharp-witted, and obsessed with the structure and spirit. Milner returned home in 1894 with more than just memories. In his luggage, a pair of footballs, a set of English rulebooks, and a passion that would soon take root in Brazilian soil. In 1895, the first recorded match took place, São Paulo Athletic Club vs Campeão de Graça. It was not played in front of a roaring crowd, nor broadcasted across the continent. Instead, it unfolded in a quiet field, observed by curious onlookers, and dominated by British and Brazilian elites. In these early years, football was a gentleman's game, exclusive, amateur, and confined to the manicured lawns of the upper class. White, well-to-do, and often European, the players reflected the social order of the time. But the game, swift, skillful, and compelling, had a fire that could not be contained for long. Soon, football clubs began to form across Brazil's major cities. São Paulo Athletic Club led the charge, followed by Fluminense in 1902, Botafogo in 1904, Corinthians in 1910, and Flamengo in 1911. These were more than sporting entities, they were social institutions, status symbols, and yet, beneath their polished surfaces, the game was beginning to step with something more democratic. Though its early days were steeped in British influence, from the uniform to the rule of play, Brazilian football will not remain a colonial import. The British brought the structure, but Brazil will bring the soul. As the 20th century began, football was no longer a foreign game. It had arrived, taken root, and was fast becoming the heartbeat of the nation. The working class, long excluded from the manicured pitches of high society, began to claim the game as their own. Slowly, football was changing hands and changing face. At the center of this revolution stood one man, Arthur Friedenreich. The son of a German businessman and an Afro-Brazilian mother, Friedenreich defined expectations of his time. On the field, he was graceful, dazzling, and artist with the ball. His style, light-footed, improvisational, full of flair. He was meant to say the father of Jogo Bonito. But he did more than score goals. He shattered barriers. In a country where racial prejudice was the rule, Friedenreich became a symbol of possibilities. As the 1920s turned to 1930s, the once exclusive game became a shared national passion. Black and mixed race players could no longer be ignored, not for their brilliance, nor for their influence. Meanwhile, football structures began to evolve. Regional rivalries, once informal, took official forms. Weekends became sacred. Stadiums became temples. Yet, there was still no national championship. The vastness of Brazil, its distance, its politics, meant football remained a regional affair. That is, until the movement of professionalism began to take hold. In 1933, the dam broke. São Paulo and Rio clubs officially embraced professionalism, ending the facade of amateurism that had a long hidden under-the-table payments. The players were no longer mere gentlemen, they were athletes, workers, icons. Football was becoming a business and a national obsession. It was only natural that Brazil would step onto the world stage. The Brazilian national team played their first intercontinental match in 1914, facing England's Exeter City. It was the beginning and an enduring love affair between nation and squad. In 1930, Brazil joined the FIFA World Cup in Uruguay. It was not yet the powerhouse it would become, but the seeds were being planted. From simple fields to elite clubs, through racism, struggle, style, Brazilian football was finding its voice and the world was starting to take notice. In the next chapter, Brazil will be taking a global stage. Hit the subscribe button to see how the world will take notice of Brazilian flair. The 1940s were a time of global turmoil. Brazil faced its own challenges, but through it all, football kept growing stronger. Long after the final whistle of local matches had blown, radios crackled into the night, carrying the names of players and clubs all over the country. Newspapers spilled in ink in praise and criticism alike. Football, once confined to the elite circles of Rio and São Paulo, now reached the deep ends of the heart of Brazil. In the towns of Bahia, in the industrial streets of Recife, and in the towns of Fortaleza, football flourished. It became more than a sport, it became a language, a culture, a national ritual. a unifier of races, classes, and regions. By the close of the decade, Brazil was ready to show the world what this game has become. And so, in 1950, the eyes of the globe turned south. Brazil will host the FIFA World Cup. It was a symbol of modernity, of confidence, of ambition. The jewel of the event, the Estadio de Maracana, a colossal amphitheater in the heart of Rio de Janeiro, built to hold 200,000 spectators. It will become the world's largest football stadium on earth, a cathedral to the beautiful game. From the Amazon to the Pampas, Brazilians poured into the streets, flying green and gold. This was more than a tournament, it was a coronation. The Brazilian national team were the favourites to win. They dazzled with skill, speed, and style. Victory felt inevitable. After a triumphant march through the tournament, Brazil faced Uruguay in their final game at the Maracana. Over 170,000 people packed the stadium, but millions more listening by radio. The nation held their breath. Brazil struck first. The Maracana roared, but then silence. Uruguay equalized. Then they took the lead. The final whistle blew. Brazil lost. The Maracanazo, as it came to be known, it was more than a football defeat. It was a national trauma. Grown men openly cried on the streets. Some refused to speak of it for years. The Brazilian national team's white shirt, forever linked to that day, was abandoned. The dream collapsed under the weight of expectation, but something stirred in the ashes. Brazil did not abandon the game. It doubled down, analyzed, reflected, changed. A nation that once imitated Europe was now searching for something truly their own. In the next decade, the world will see the results. A new era was coming, and it would shine. In the 1950s, Brazil was known for carnivals and coffee. In 1958, Brazil became known for football as poetry. This was the year a barefoot boy from Bauru became a king. 17 years old, skinny, shy, Edison Aran do Nascimento, better known as Pelé, has never left Brazil before. Now, the eyes of the world were upon him. And by his side, Garrincha, the little bird, a dribbler of divine mischief, born with crooked legs and unstoppable joy. He didn't run, he danced. Brazil adopted a bold 4-2-4 formation, an attacking blueprint unheard of in Europe circles. It favored flair, creativity, speed. Where others built walls, Brazil built symphonies. Pelé scored 6 goals, including 2 in the final against the host. Garrincha danced down the wings. Brazil lifted their first World Cup trophy, but it wasn't just a victory, it was a revelation. A new Brazil arrived, proud, united, champions. In 1962, the world watched to see if it was a fluke. This time, Pelé was injured early, but Brazil did not stumble. Garrincha took the mantle. He tormented defenders, scoring and creating with joyful audacity. Brazil retained their crown. 2 World Cups back to back. South America stood on top of the footballing world. But in 1966, in England, the tide turned. Brazil arrived as favourites, but the beauty of their game met a brutal resistance. Rough tactics, poor officiating, and outdated preparation saw Brazil crash out of the group stages. Pelé, kicked out of the tournament, vowed never to return to the World Cup. It was a bitter moment. The beautiful game had now been blooded. But Brazil will rise again, stronger, smarter, and in 1970, they reached football paradise. Pelé returned, not just to play, but to lead. He was joined by a golden generation: Jairzinho, who would score in every match, Rivelino with his booming left foot, Tazio with his intelligence, and Carlos Alberto's elegance. Under coach Mario Zagallo, the 4-2-4 evolved into a fluid, beautiful symphony. Positions blurred, players flowed, defenders attacked, attackers defended. Football never looked so free. In the final against Italy, Brazil dazzled. Pelé rose high to score the opener. Jairzinho added another. Then the goal came, a move of effortless beauty. And Carlos Alberto's thunderbolts. The world stood still. Brazil won 4-1, their 3rd World Cup. The Jules Rimet Trophy was theirs to keep. Pelé became the only man to win 3 World Cups. The 1970 team, hailed as many as the greatest ever assembled, was another man era. Garrincha was gone, Pelé's time was nearly up, but their legacy lived on forever in the soul of the game. After the golden era of 1970 ended, the world asked, what next? Could the magic return, or was it gone forever? The post-Pelé era began with confusion. The beauty of Brazil football remained, but something had changed. The expectations were now colossal. Every tournament came with a demand, not just to win, but to win beautifully. In 1974, Brazil traveled to West Germany with their hopes in their heart, but without their talisman. The flair was still present, but increasingly results demanded resilience. Brazil were outplayed by Johan Cruyff's total football. They exited without glory. 1978 in Argentina brought better results. Brazil went undefeated, but the trophy slipped through their fingers again. A questionable draw against Argentina and Peru left Brazilian fans feeling cheated. Once more, the game slipped away. The magic had not vanished, but neither had it returned to the summit. But then came 1982. Coach Tele Santana was a romantic. He believed football was an art before it was war. And in 1982, he sculpted a masterpiece. Zico, Socrates, Falcao, Eder, a midfield of poets, a team of visionaries. They played with harmony, every pass had a purpose, every movement was music. Brazil dazzled the world, not with brute force, but with brilliance. Then came the match against Italy. It was supposed to be a celebration, but Italy, led by the reborn Paolo Rossi, stunned Brazil with ruthless efficiency. Brazil scored twice, Italy scored 3. The world moaned. How could such beauty lose? But that was the paradox of 1982. They were perhaps the best team never to win a World Cup. Tel Santana refused to compromise, but the result planted a seed of doubt. Could beauty still conquer? As 1982 wore on, the world of football became more pragmatic. Physicality replaced flair, structure outmuscled spontaneity, and Brazil slowly, reluctantly, followed suit. In 1986, Brazil still tried to dream. Socrates and Zico returned, older and wiser, but the quarterfinals against France became a heartbreak. Defeat on penalties. Another team of dreams had come up short. And then came 1990. Brazil, under Sebastião Lozani, made a radical shift. The flair was gone, replaced by discipline, strategy, a back three, a formation foreign to Brazil's DNA was employed. The result? Elimination in the round of 16 to a Maradona-led Argentina. Brazil had forgotten how to dance, and so they lost the fight. The soul of Brazilian football was at war with itself, between memory and modernity, between beauty and brutality. The nation asked, what were we without our beautiful game? A new era was rising, strong, smart, and ready to blend art with results. By the early 90s, Brazil had lost its spark, but a new team was ready to bring it back. In 1994, football returned to the United States, and so did Brazil's hunger for glory. After a 24-year drought, Brazil arrived with a new strategy: balance. This team wasn't all flair, it had grit. Led by Captain Dunga, it was disciplined, defensive, and precise. But up front, Brazil had a light in the ball. Two men, Romario and Bebeto, refined the art of attack. Romario, with his lethal instincts and razor-sharp finishing, was unstoppable. Bebeto brought flair, movement, and vision. Together, they were chaos for defenses. As Brazil progressed through the tournament, they faced drama, adversity, and brilliance, but they reached the final against Italy, a familiar rival, a familiar tension. 122 minutes produced 0 goals. The match will be decided by the most agonizing will of all: penalties. Roberto Baggio's miss was immortal. Brazil were champions once more. A 4th World Cup, redemption, relief, resurrection. Romario had carried the nation, Dunga had restored steel, and Brazil had found a way to win again. In 1998, Brazil returned to the final, but with a new icon, the name that would define an era: O Phenomenal, Ronaldo Nazario. Ronaldo was not just fast, he was explosive. Not just skillful, he was unstoppable. At 21, he was already the best player on the planet. Brazil once again surged through the tournament. Ronaldo shone, Bebeto and Rivaldo supported. But as they reached the final against host France, something strange happened. Hours before kickoff, Ronaldo suffered a mysterious seizure. Chaos followed. He was declared out, then suddenly reinstated. The reason remained debated to this day. The final was a nightmare. France, led by Zinedine Zidane, dominated. Brazil seemed dazed, distracted, defeated. The loss haunted the nation. Questions lingered. What happened to Ronaldo? Why was he allowed to play? The pain was raw, but the fire within him had just begun. 2002 brought about a World Cup of firsts. The first hosted in Asia, the first shared between two nations, and for Brazil, the first real redemption. The 3 R's, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, formed an attacking trio the world will never forget. Each brought their own unique magic: Ronaldo's power, Rivaldo's intelligence, at Ronaldinho's mischief. Coach Luis Felipe Scolari built a team both pragmatic and potent, tactically disciplined and mentally resilient, and above all, free to attack. Brazil swept through the tournament, dazzling fans across continents. Ronaldo, who had suffered years of injury, was reborn. He scored 8 goals, including 2 in the final against Germany. It was a fairy tale ending, from disaster in Paris to triumph in Yokohama. Brazil lifted a 5th World Cup. For Ronaldo, it was redemption. For Brazil, history. And for the world, a reminder. In Brazil, glory is expected, but the real battle was in the heart of the national team. Brazil arrived in 2006 as favourites. The world watched in awe. Ronaldinho had to speak. The ever-dangerous Ronaldo, the force of Adriano, the elegance of Kaká. On paper, it was a team of dreams. But football was played on grass, not on headlines. The so-called Glasgow squad looked more like a mirage than a machine. Out of sync, out of shape, and perhaps overconfident. By the quarterfinals, they met a hungry France and an ageless Zinedine Zidane. Brazil faltered. Ronaldo isolated, Ronaldinho invisible, they were out. The stars had aligned, but not for Brazil. The team was accused of complacency. The golden names were criticized, and the Galacticos were gone. In 2010, Brazil returned with a different vision. Under Dunga, the captain of the 1994 champions, romance was replaced with rigidity, structure was king, and creativity stifled. It worked, until it didn't. Brazil looked strong, organized, efficient, but against the Netherlands, one mistake turned the order into chaos. Up 1-0, Brazil crumbled. Julio Cesar misjudged the cross, Melo lost his head, and in those chaotic moments, Brazil were undone. Not by brilliance, but by their own implosion. Dunga's regime ended not in failure, but in frustration. Brazil were efficient, but Brazil was no longer Brazil. In 2014, the World Cup returned home. For the first time in 60 years, Brazil will host the tournament, and this time, they believed destiny would meet history. Led by a young Neymar, Brazil stormed through the group stages. There was joy, there was rhythm, but beneath the surface, there were cracks. Then, disaster struck. Neymar, the symbol of hope, was ruled out. Thiago Silva, their captain, suspended. And then came Germany. The world witnessed not just a defeat, but a national humiliation. Germany did not win. They dismantled them, 7-1. It wasn't just a loss, it was a humiliation ritual. The heaviest defeat in Brazilian football history. At home, in front of the world. Brazil stopped. The music fell silent. The streets emptied. Nations began to ask the most painful question: who are we now? The soul was broken. Healing will take time. 2014 left scars, but Brazil rose to rebuild and rediscover. The trauma of 2014 forced change. Luis Felipe Scolari was out. In came Dunga again. But nostalgia didn't heal the wound. Brazil needed more than discipline. They needed direction. Under Dunga, Brazil remained stuck, frustrated, predictable. Until 2016, a new voice emerged, measured, meticulous, modern. With Tite came stability, tactical balance, respect. He asked Brazil to be patient again, to build, to believe. At the heart of it all, Neymar, a boy with a dancer's touch, a showman's soul. After 2014, he bore the way of history, the way of expectation. He became the new face of the national team, flawed, brilliant, burdened. By 2018, Brazil looked different, older, sharper. Under Tite, they were compact and composed. The reckless joy of old had been replaced with controlled ambition. They progressed with purpose, but in the quarterfinals, they met Belgium, clever, clinical, unafraid. One goal too many, one comeback too short. Brazil bowed out in the last 8, not with disaster, but with disappointment. This time, there was no collapse, but still no crown. In Qatar, Brazil came armed with hope. Neymar now seasoned, Vinicius Jr. rising, a new generation behind the old guard. For a moment, the joy returned. Brazil danced again, fearless, fluid. It felt right. But football was cruel. Against Croatia, Brazil had it won until they didn't. Neymar's moment of brilliance erased in minutes, then penalties, then silence. Another quarterfinals, another heartbreak. The search for glory continued. Between World Cups, Brazil turned to South America's oldest prize, the Copa America. In 2019, they hosted and finally won. Without Neymar, Brazil found resolve. A team led by veterans, not icons. Casemiro's fire, Dani Alves' leadership, Tite's control. At home, they conquered the tournament. and the continent was theirs once more. 2 years later, the final return to the Maracana, Brazil vs Argentina, Neymar vs Messi, old foes, ancient tension. But this time, the script changed. Messi finally found glory. Brazil lost, but in losing, saw something deeper. They were evolving, no longer just flair, but fight, humility, and maturity. From heartbreak to hope, Brazil now walk a new path, honoring the past while shaping the future. If you have followed the journey so far, don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now to see what the future holds for Brazil. Brazilian football is more than a game. To understand it, we need to look beyond the pitch. Founded in 1914, the CFBF became the heartbeat of football in Brazil, responsible for the national teams, league organization, and international representation. But over the decades, this heart has been tested by so many scandals. In the 21st century, the CFBF found itself in the eye of the global storm, involved in the same corruption scandal that rocked FIFA in 2015. Allegations of bribery, vote buying, and embezzlement tainted the very organization entrusted with Brazil's national pride. Presidents were indicted, deals exposed, trust shaken, but in the aftermath, a new movement began, one demanding transparency, accountability, and reform. Today, the CFBF walks a tighter line. Caught between its history and modern push for openness, the battle for governance continues, but so too does hope for a more transparent football future. While the national team draws the headlines, it's in the clubs across vast cities and passionate neighborhoods that the soul of Brazilian football truly lives. In recent years, a new era of Brazilian football club dominance has emerged. Palmeiras, Flamengo, Atlético Mineiro. These are not just clubs, these are institutions, backed by stronger finances, sharper management, and a swelling fan base. With improved infrastructure and investments, Brazilian clubs are again competing and winning. At a continental level, the Copa Libertadores is no longer an Argentine monopoly. At the heart of this growth lies Brazil's greatest export, talent. Clubs have doubled down on youth academies, modernizing facilities, scouting early, and preparing players not just for Brazil, but for Europe. Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, Hendrick, teenagers snapped up by European giants before they were old enough to drive. Brazil remained the top exporters of footballers, a global supply of dreams. But as these youngsters depart earlier and earlier, the question grows, is Brazil selling its future too soon? Or is this because of globalization? Brazil is changing, but one thing remains the same. Football is Brazil, and Brazil is football. For a century, Brazil has defined football. Now, it faces a new future. Gone are the days where flair alone will conquer the world. Today's Brazil is evolving, adapted to the rhythm of modern football without forgetting its samba soul. Brazilian coaches now blend classic improvisation with pressing structures and positional play, a hybrid born from necessity where the artistry of Pelé meets the precision of Pep. The midfield no longer dances, it dictates. Defenders don't just clear, they construct. The national team has not just become expressive, but efficient. From the favela to the floodlights, a new generation has risen, bold, fearless, ready. Hendrick, a teenage sensation with a rocket on each foot. Rodrigo, a cold finisher who lives for the moment. And Vinicius Jr., the torchbearer of Brazilian fire. Brazil's conveyor belt of brilliance has never stopped. But now, these talents have arrived not just with flair, but with tactical intelligence, European discipline, and global awareness. Multilingual, multi-club, multi-dimensional, these are not just footballers, these are ambassadors of Brazil's evolving identity. It's been over 2 decades since the fifth star was on into the crest, since Ronaldo lifted gold in Yokohama, and still the country still awaits for the hexa. No other footballing nation feels the weight of history quite like Brazil. Every World Cup is not just a tournament, it's a reckoning, a journey, a hope of reborn. In 2026, the world's grandest stage will be shared across 3 nations, USA, Canada, and Mexico. A World Cup of new generation, and for Brazil, a new mission. Led by a maturing core and fearless youth, Brazil enters 2026 not just as the lone favourites, but as the most watched, the most anticipated. Because wherever the World Cup goes, Brazil follows. The game has changed, but the dream still lives on. One team, one nation, still chasing the dream of the hexa. In Brazil, football isn't just a game. It's life, it's rhythm, it's the spirit, and it's the pride of the nation. From the Amazon to the streets of São Paulo, football is the common language of Brazil. A game that transcends geography, class, and history, a unifying force in a land of great diversity. In moments of triumph, it lifts a nation. In moments of hardship, it brings it together. Through dictatorship and democracy, through prosperity and poverty. Football has been Brazil's most enduring mirror and its greatest muse. The yellow shirt is not just a kit, it's a symbol of resistance, of joy, of national pride, stitched together in rhythm, resilience, and unmatched beauty. What defines Brazil's football is not just success, but style, Not just trophies, but poetry. Jogo Bonito, to play beautifully. Not just tactics, but a philosophy. It's a joy as resistance, an expression through motion, an art born on concrete pitches and refined on the world's grandest stage. Brazil doesn't seek to win, it seeks to enchant. It echoes around the world. It inspired generations, shaped different playing styles, and reminded us all that football at its best is magic. But beauty alone is not enough. In the age of analytics and markets, Brazil faces a new kind of opponent: commercialization, corruption, and cultural drift. How does one preserve the soul of Jogo Bonito in a world of billion-pound transfers? How does a country known for giving so much talent to the world learn to keep their brightest stars at home? From Pelé to Vinicius, from streets to stadiums, from heartbreaks to historic victories, Brazil has not only played the game, it defined it. The world may catch up, the world may change, but one thing remains the same: Brazil and football will forever be intertwined. One game, one nation, one legacy that will dance eternally in the memory of the sport. Hey guys, so I like to have this talk with you guys at the end of every video. So this type of video is gonna be making like once in a while. Don't get used to this type of content, but I'm probably gonna be making more of like the last video I made of like out of terrible goalkeeping. I'm gonna be making more videos like that, so just get ready for more videos like that. And this video, once in a while, when I find a topic that's like I'm really interested about, then I'll make a highly researched topic about it. But for now, I'm gonna be sticking to the other one. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe.